Hello, and welcome to Film Slam Streaming's post-film conversation for Touchline. My name is Eric Siler. I'm an instructor of film, media arts, and communications, as well as moderator for this conversation. We're very pleased to be joined by the director of Touchline, Mohammed Saffouri. Mohammed is an award-winning Palestinian-American filmmaker based in Fairfax, Virginia, and he distinguished himself early on in his career by earning a Capital Emmy for his documentary debut film. His film Tribeca, which you've just seen, was selected to participate in Tribeca Film Festival. He was the first alumni for George Mason University to have a film screen at Tribeca. Joining us today from Fairfax, Virginia is Mohammed Saffouri. Hello, Mohammed, and welcome.
Hello, Eric. Thank you for having me.
It's so great to have you, and so glad that you were able to bring this award-winning personal work to us. I know there's a personal connection to making this film. Can you explain to our audience what that is?
Sure. Well, Touchline is actually the story of my grandfather, Mohammed Saffouri, who was a soccer player back in Palestine in 1948, and he wanted to play soccer for the Palestinian national team. So this film is dedicated to my grandfather, Mohammed Saffouri.
Oh, great. So tell us a little bit more. Did he actually play for the national team? Did he get selected? Tell us more.
So although the story is based on a true story, but there were some dramatized or dramatic elements, I would say, for the story. So in real life, he didn't actually get selected, but his dream was to play for the national team. In the film, we made it that he was selected for the national team.
Okay.
Although he was playing in a local club in his hometown, Haifa, Palestine. It was like an official soccer club that the national team used to select players from those clubs. That club was one of.
So he must have been a pretty good soccer player.
He was, and was I remember hearing his story from him personally, and that he mentioned that he was actually one of the youngest players in that football club.
Oh, great. So the story also reflects on what happened in 1948 as well, too. And this is something that, dreams were crushed during that time. So you wanted to, I guess, maybe honor your grandfather and also educate the viewers about the beginning of this conflict. Is that correct?
You're absolutely right. Well, that was the main point of this film. I wanted to show people and educate people about what's happening in Palestine. I was so surprised, Eric, when I first moved here to the States, and I was telling people where I'm originally from. I would tell them I'm from Palestine, and they would hear, "Oh, Pakistan." I was like, no, they're two separate countries. And I was surprised that people didn't know about Palestine. So I wanted to educate people of my homeland and the land of my parents and grandparents. So I couldn't find actually a better story to tell other than the story of the beginning of this conflict that's happening in Palestine. And I also couldn't find a better story than the story of my grandfather who lived the Nakba, which means catastrophe in English. And that's what Palestinians refer to what happened to them in 1948, that they were kicked out from their hometowns. And as we said, this topic has been covered previously politically, right? But we want to show that Palestinians are like any other group of people who had dreams, who had goals to achieve. People wanted to be artists, people wanted to be soccer players, people wanted to build houses and families and all of their dreams. And my grandfather's story is only one story of many other Palestinian stories that were demolished because of the Israeli occupation in 1948.
That you did a good job of educating people and opening our eyes to it, because even Hollywood doesn't really produce films of this nature about that time. So you would think there would be some major motion pictures, but here you're coming along with this, which is great.
I know that, and I knew while making this film is going to be controversial, and maybe a lot of festivals will reject the film, or many people will be afraid of showing that side of the story. But that's why we are filmmakers. We want to tell our stories. We have a lot of stories that are not told, and that's why I wanted to become a filmmaker in the first place and make this film specifically to just like, I want to tell my story. This is part of who I am, and this is part of how the story of my grandfather shaped my destiny and shaped my life until today. So it is important for me to show the other world our side of the story, and show them a personal story that I would like to share with the other people.
Exactly. And who better to tell it from someone part of that culture? And I guess to tell us a little bit about the putting together the script for this film. Did you have to do a lot of research? Did you have to talk to other family members? You knew a lot already. Tell us more.
Yes, so I wrote this script. I was also the writer for Touchline, based on actually a recording cassette that my dad had from my grandfather. My dad interviewed his dad, which is my grandfather, back in the 2000. And it was like a 2 hour long interview. My grandfather mentioning his story from growing up in Palestine to playing for the soccer club in Haifa, then being a refugee in Lebanon and creating a football club and whatever, and what else. So that was my main source of writing the script. So I was writing as my grandfather was talking in that cassette recording, and then also for the dialogue and for the terms that they used. My grandfather spoke different Arabic that I speak right now, so I was privileged that my grandmother, his wife, was lives like 20 minutes away from me here in Fairfax, Virginia. So I won't visit her. Of course, I visit her all the time, but I would go dedicated to just ask her some questions about the script, like how would you say this back in 1948, and she would tell me the terms that they would use or that her husband, my grandfather, used to say. So I would write it down, and I know that her in-laws, my grandfather's parents, also spoke different Arabic than their children. So I asked her, like, how would your father-in-law would say this? Because as you see in the film that I also showed my grandfather's dad, also like how people dressed like. So I asked a lot of people. I asked my family members, and I asked my older aunts of like if they remember their grandparents, how they looked like, what the dresses that they were using. Was Haifa the place where the film takes place? Was it a city? Was it a village? Were there tall buildings? Were there cars? Because I wanted to show people the actual Palestine, the actual city that they lived in, Haifa, and it was a big city. I was also afraid of showing like tall buildings because we were shooting in 2020 and there's modern life all over. We can see satellite dishes on top of roofs. We can see AC units. So of course they didn't have AC or satellite dishes back then, but I also want to ask if there are like tall buildings. Is it okay to show tall buildings? Were there lights in the streets, or were people using lanterns? I don't know. So I had to ask these kind of questions, but also I did a research and saw that Haifa was actually a very modern city. People used to wear modern clothes. They had cars, they had roads, they had buildings, they had lighting. It was a complete city. And also, there was a book that I actually used as a reference for Khairi Abul Jubain, who was a historian who wrote a book about that, included the football club and the football life in Palestine back before the occupation in 1948 and even before that. So I had many sources for this film. I had a personal source that is my grandfather's story, but also I had a scholar or a professional source that was a book written about the soccer in Palestine before the occupation.
Well, so just the amount of knowledge that you had to really bring us an authentic piece is just tremendous, and the accolades that you received from this are well deserved. So I understand you actually shot this in Jordan, and tell us a little bit about the filming process, securing the site, finding the actors, and so forth.
Exactly, Eric. So as I mentioned to you before, that we shot the film in 2020 during COVID. So before COVID started, like at the end of 2019, in December, I traveled to Jordan to meet with the producer and try to create a team, because I was the only one who's coming from the US to shoot in Jordan, but the whole team was actually from Jordan. So I wanted to meet with cinematographers, assistant directors, actors, and whatnot. So we did some scouting locations, and I knew, so I know that while writing the script, I had only one indoor scene, which was Ahmed's house. And ironically, we shot at my grandfather's own house in Jordan. So after my grandfather flee from his hometown in Palestine, they went to Lebanon, then from Lebanon to Kuwait, and then from Kuwait to Jordan. And we shot actually in his home, in his house, the scenes that were in Ahmed's house in the film. It was in his actual house, and we had his pictures on the walls, his actual picture of him and his dad on the walls of that scene. So I knew that the indoor scene is going to be in my grandfather's house, but other scenes, I wanted a place that looked like Palestine back in 1948. And I was actually lucky to find a place in Jordan, in a salt city, that is still looking old and has the same historic look that you used to have back in the 800s, actually not even the 1900s or 1940s. So we shot the city scenes in Salt. We shot the soccer field in Amman, Jordan, and so I went there for, as I said, in December 2019, but I went back to shoot the film in early September 2020. We finished all the location scouting, building up the team, and it took us actually only 3 days to shoot that film. So we shot, one day was in the soccer field, and then one field was in the house, and also other outdoor scenes. And then a third day was in the city, in the old city in Salt.
So tell me, what did you do differently once you actually got on set? You had this vision, you had the script, but getting there, you had to deal with challenges and so forth and improvise. So tell us some things that changed around and for the better,
Man,
probably.
you're making me you're having those flashbacks that some are good and some are not, actually. Some of the good things that the pace was good. I was really concerned about shooting in 3 days because I felt the script needed more days, but again, because of COVID, we didn't have the advantage of like shooting in long days and having big crews. So first thing we had to do is make our teams way smaller. Instead of having 50 people on set, we had like 20 people on set. We had people to multitask. And instead of doing lighting, you will do lighting and grip, for example. Or instead of doing script supervision, going to be doing script supervision and also camera reports. So we had some of our crew members to multitask because we didn't want to have a lot of people on set, because it was still the beginning of COVID, so people didn't know what to do, and the guidelines were very strict at that point. So, and also we didn't want to have anyone in danger. We had to test everyone as well. So that was one of the biggest challenges. Another big challenge was finding locations, actually, because a lot of locations that we confirmed in the first place in December in 2019, they were shut down during COVID. So we had to find other places. And again, also a lot of things that you have in mind, and then when you go on set, it doesn't really work as planned. Like I remember our production designer, I wanted those smokes in the soccer field to show. And then he only had, because they were very expensive and we were on a budget, he only had 3 those bombs that, like, when you light up, it gives smoke. And I was like, okay, so it's only one take, it has to be perfect. And everything went like, we're all ready, we're all prepared. Okay, 3, 2, 1, action. He light up the bombs, and then a purple smoke come out of it. I was like, that's not a war. Nothing happens in wars like that. So we all looked at each other, and I just kept like I was giving the cinematographer a sign to keep rolling. It's like we'll fix it in post, right? And that's what we did. We colored the purple smoke to white smoke, so it worked out. But it was like something that we were not expecting at all. Those are just some of the challenges we had, and that we had to work with during the shooting.
I see. And what about the actors in the film? Are they from Jordan or where are they from?
So funny enough, I wanted to shoot in Jordan because Jordan has also a big Palestinian population, because we know after the occupation, a lot of people immigrated to Jordan. Because I wanted people who can actually speak the language or the dialect and have the same accent of the Palestinians. But three of the main actors were actually not Palestinians. The main actor is Syrian, but who was studying in Jordan at that time. He was a college student who was studying, and the other one was also who was Ahmed's friend. Eliyahu was also Syrian, and Ahmed's dad was Jordanian, but they all did the accent and the dialect perfectly. They're great actors. So they were all living there at that time, but not necessarily they were Palestinians or Jordanians, for example. But yeah.
Okay, well, great. We got just a little bit time left. One thing I do want to ask you about in particular, can you explain to viewers and myself too, probably, the scene with the elderly lady, and she was the soldiers were giving her a difficult time, and Akman and his friend came to her rescue. Explain what was actually happening at that point.
So at that time, people were fleeing their homes. And the thing is that they thought it's just gonna last for a week or two. So some of them just like locked their doors and took the keys with them, just like, oh, we're gonna return back. So they were allowing everyone to escape the country, the militias. They were like allowing people to leave, but not to go back. So if you leave, that's it, you leave. If you resist, you might be killed, or most likely you'll be killed. So at that scene, we wanted to show that people were actually leaving the city. Like everyone was walking the other direction than the two boys that were Ahmed and his friend Eliyahu were walking. And then while they were walking home after the match, they saw that older lady that we wanted to represent the Palestinian woman, the Palestinian woman's resistance. That a lot of or a big or an important element of the Palestinian resistance were women, and how they teach their kids, and the sacrifice they did for their homeland. So we wanted to represent that in that old lady who shows like the old land of the Palestinian people as well. So when she was stopped there and they tried to put their knee, or one of the soldiers put his knee on top of her neck, she after she stood up, when the guys came in and helped her, she was like, you will never be able to break my neck. And that was like a metaphor of like breaking the Palestinians' resistance to return to their homes. And also, as I said, is a representation of the Palestinian women's resistance.
Well done. And the final scene, when Ahmed gets the soccer ball, passing on hope. Is that what you intended for the viewers to come away with?
Exactly. So I wanted to say that yes, we might not achieve our dreams, but we're not gonna give up our dreams, and we're gonna pass them to our next generations and next generation. And that dream is not only about soccer. It's like it's a metaphor as well of returning to our homes and giving our message to the next generation, because people think we'll forget. It's like, oh, Palestinians were kicked out, like the older will die and then the younger will forget. But no, we won't forget. We will pass our message to our next generation, the next generation. And that's also, Ahmed didn't give up his dream, but he wanted to share it and give it to the next generation to continue what he started.
Absolutely. Well done there. Just curious question. Do you play soccer? Has that talent been passed along?
Yes, I do play soccer, and I'm a big soccer fan. I actually went to the World Cup in like 4 months ago in Qatar to watch the World Cup. But yeah, I'm a big soccer fan, and I still play soccer, and soccer is a big part of my life, to be honest.
Great, good for you. Good for you. So fitting that you've did a film like that. So what's next for you? Is there a soccer film, or what can we expect to see from you soon?
Well, honestly, I'm now writing my first feature film, and it has nothing to do with soccer, honestly, but it's about a couple that come to the States to deliver their baby. I'm not going to give more details, but this is just the main idea of the film.
Okay, interesting. I see you put a lot of thought and detail into planning and executing your film. So if it's anything like Touchline, we're in for a treat. Mohammed Saffouri, director of Touchline, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me and for this beautiful conversation.
And thank you to our audience for joining us for this important and invigorating conversation. For more information about upcoming film festivals, please visit us at clevelandfilms.org. I'm Eric Siler. Thank you.
Thank you.